Hello and welcome to Face to Face. I'm your host Adam Jasser. Donald Trump returned to the White House on Monday, promising a golden age for America. To discuss the first day of Mr. Trump's second term, I'm joined by Michał Broniatowski, Editor-in-Chief of TVP World. Michał, it's great to have you. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
So, on the one hand, we know what to expect from Mr. Trump, but on the other, unpredictability seems to be the word many people are using to describe his foreign policy.
Which is predictable.
Which is predictable. Someone used the phrase, America rolled the dice with the second Trump presidency. So what number came up?
I don't know what numbers mean in this context.
Well, probably 1 is low, 6 is high.
In terms of emotions, I would say 9 in the scale of 10. We will have a good time for journalists, because...
For us, you mean?
Yes. We will have probably a lot to talk about, not always being happy about it. If he fulfills all of his promises he made in the run-up to the elections and after the elections, you would probably see the world turned upside down. So this will not happen. His first failure in his promises was this one-day peace for peace in Ukraine.
Is this the reason why he didn't mention it in his speech, in his inaugural speech?
I don't think so. He just evaded anything about Europe. Europe is on the other side of the pond, and he will have enough problems with our part of the world not to be bothered when he has enormous task ahead of him from his point of view in the US. So
it was a very domestic-oriented
yes.
speech. But later on, during his meeting with the press, after he signed several executive orders, he did mention a couple of issues, such as Russia, peace negotiations, Europe. Can we already see a contour of something that he's going to do?
It seems that he may have changed his attitude towards Russian aggression. In Ukraine, he said that President Zelensky is ready for peace talks, while Putin seems not to be ready. And he even used the words, Russia is going to be in big trouble if it doesn't comply with the requests of the West, in particular from the US.
So in a sense, this chimes with some of the interpretations we heard earlier, saying that if Putin isn't willing to talk, then Trump is prepared to pile pressure on Putin.
Yes, because Putin has already said that he doesn't accept any conditions that were proposed in various iterations of peace proposals for Ukraine, even those who are very good for him. For example, keeping all his territorial gains in place, which is unacceptable for Ukraine, but he didn't accept even that. I think Trump will be exerting pressure on him because he doesn't want military problems around the world. What he's seeking is problems in squeezing his partners around the world in terms of trade war rather than hot war.
Yes. So when you are listening to this speech yesterday and also to the later press conference, what do you consider to be the points that people really should pay attention to?
I don't want to speak here in the name of the American audience because...
From a European perspective.
From the European perspective, what is really important is what he does with his predictions about, or warnings about, or plans to possibly even by force entering the Danish territory of Greenland.
But he didn't mention that yesterday.
He didn't mention it, but he mentioned it before. So it's interesting whether he keeps this point. If the only real statements about or vocal statements about foreign politics were changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico into Gulf of America.
Which is, at the end of the day, insignificant, right? It's
Which is
pure
just
symbolism.
This is just showing the state of his mind. Also taking back the Panama Channel
But that's a more, there is at least some policy rationale behind this.
Exactly.
America built it.
Yes, and then America is now, in his words, cheated on fees for passing the
Also, the Chinese have built ports there and sort
exactly.
of...
So he may have a point at least to, to demand a lot and to get, for example, lowering the tariffs for...
But apart from Greenland, he also promised to colonize Mars. So
not colonize, but to put the flag of the United States.
Some US commentators were joking that he was going to send Elon Musk to Mars, his home planet, as they said. We're laughing about Elon Musk, also about his gesture, which caused some consternation because, intentionally or not, he sort of replicated the Nazi salute. This might have been an incident, but never mind, it happened. But seriously, the question of this concentration of power and the link between business and the government seems to be unprecedented in US history. And this is going to create a lot of conflicts of interest between these people. So what does it mean for the world? What does it mean for America?
It's the second time that Americans are elevating to the top position in their country a billionaire. Whether he has problems, financial problems or not, he is a billionaire. So these guys like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, or Mark Zuckerberg sitting behind him on the podium there, it's something which shouldn't surprise us because they are like-minded people. The problem is, of course, this conflict of interest and influence on the country's politics of people who have their veiled or even open interests in changing policies this or that direction.
So, in the end, what do you think will be the impact of this? For example, on relations with Europe, because we know some of these big tech companies, they have a problem with the European Union, which is trying to impose some regulations on these companies. And of course, they're protesting. And the reason some of them backed Trump recently is because they hope he will help them ease the pressure from the EU.
Well, this is exactly the thing which I mentioned. Their real interest is to have no problems in making business. And Europe is, let's say, disturbing this free business in which they collect data freely and then make money on taking advantage of content produced by media company, among other things. And so it applies to all of these gentlemen who are sitting there. And of course, they will be very grateful to Mr. Trump if he exerts pressure on the European Union to ease its controls on technological companies.
It was interesting that Trump didn't really talk about Europe or any other alliances. He didn't mention Japan, he didn't mention Asia, which is a priority, not just for his administration, but for all US administration, as we know. But he didn't mention any of this. No mention of allies whatsoever. It was mostly America first. We need to pursue our national interest and strategic interest. Nothing. But some remarks about Europe were made by him later during his press conference with...
It was a chat with...
It was a chat. It was
journalists
when
he was signing this...
Yes, he was signing the decrees. So... But it wasn't very hard, It was rather vague. So in a sense, the expectations were like in his previous inauguration, when he presented this really dark vision of everything and was very bombastic. This time around, it seemed as if he was really controlled.
I think he wants first to put things in order, in his words. In Washington, where, as he called it, a radical and corrupt establishment has extracted power and wealth from our citizens.
Well, looking at those pictures of his family and these billionaires, if that wasn't establishment, then I don't know what establishment is.
Well, you don't have to convince me, but he is the guy who is absolutely focused on revenge, because he considers all his legal problems which are genuine and justified because he is convicted in 4 trials. In one, he was even sentenced. By the way, he is the first convicted felon to take the presidency of the United States. And he considers this as a plot of elites and of the
deep state, as he used to call it.
Exactly. This state is so deep that nobody ever saw it. If there's any justification to talk about deep state, we are about to see it, because oligarchs, we were mentioning before, their influence on the state, on the administration, is in fact the activity of something which is maybe called deep state, because these guys have not been elected. One of them, Elon Musk, will be even head of the very influential new administration office, which is going to take care of the, I don't know how to call it, the
reducing red tape, or
yes, reducing red tape,
removing regulations, cutting government spending.
Exactly, removing red tape from the point of view of these guys is let us do our business. Remove all brakes and so on. So this doesn't have to be compatible with the expectations and needs of the citizens.
Right. You know, one interesting thing Trump mentioned was that he wants to fix U.S. healthcare. And we remember that in his first term, he was also promising to fix healthcare. Nothing happened. And he's totally vague about how he wants to fix healthcare. But he made that commitment. So is this one of the examples?
As I said already, the only thing we can predict is his unpredictability. So whatever he does should be taken as a fact of life and get adapted to it, which means Europe has to get prepared. And luckily, it started to getting prepared, talking about arranging money, funds to create its own defending power, the defending machine. Also, Europe has to be able to exert some influence in places like Middle East. Of course, in Ukraine, Europe must be capable of being as strong player as the United States on the fronts of Ukraine.
Right. You're right. I mean, it's mobilizing Europe already. We can see that. The war in Ukraine was the first factor that started to mobilize Europe. I think even more than Trump's earlier request to boost military spending and so on and so forth. The question I've got to you is that back in 2016 and 17 when he was in power, his impact on Europe was, it happened also after Brexit. There was some consolidation in Europe because the Brexit combined with Trump put pressure on the EU to get its act together. Are we going to observe a similar trend now that Europe realizes that it just has to move ahead and just get things done?
Well, this stick has two ends. On the one side is the mobilization of the, let's call it liberal Europe, but on the other hand, we see the wave of hard right growing, getting more influence in major countries of Europe, and this will continue because we will soon have probably early elections. Well, we will have early elections in Germany, in which hard right will make new gains, probably not yet as big as to be part of the government, but still, we may have far-right prime minister in Austria. We already have people who don't call themselves right-wingers, but definitely the definition of right-wingers applies to people like Orban or Fico. Who knows who will be the next president of France, and so on, so on.
Yeah, and elections are coming up in Poland, and it seems that at least some political operators are hoping that Elon Musk is not going to meddle only in the British and German politics, but will also enter Poland on a white horse.
I don't think that Trump, who probably hardly knows where all our countries are on the map.
No, he knows about Poland. He visited
About
Poland several
yes,
times,
but,
and
you
he
know,
has.
we shouldn't be.
Although you're right, because yesterday he wasn't sure where Spain was.
Yeah.
He said Spain was part of the BRICS
Yes.
grouping.
Yeah. Okay. So before he lands, where these or that countries lie, and then.
Do you expect him to come over to Poland before the presidential election?
I don't know. It depends if he is in Europe for other issues. If he comes to Europe, he may jump off to Poland to just to give some support to the former government. But I don't think he would be coming to Europe, especially to give support to
the opposition.
To the opposition, and because of him preferring always to talk to strong leaders, and Donald Tusk is emerging as a strong leader in Europe, a leader of the, for example, pro-Ukrainian alliance, and so on. So he may be a partner to Donald's.
Or he may prefer not to take sides before the election. It was interesting because, you know, there was a lot of discussion about who was invited, who wasn't invited to the inauguration. And a lot of European far right was hoping that participating there will elevate their status. In the end, we saw Giorgia Meloni there, but on the sidelines, together with the Argentinian president. Prime Minister Morawiecki, former Prime Minister Morawiecki of the opposition Law and Justice Party, was there, but he wasn't really in the crowd. He was on the sidelines. Nevertheless, he posted this tweet saying, "The wind of change is blowing," I'm paraphrasing, "from America to Europe, with love."
Yes. Again, I mean, Poland is not the main place of interest for Trump, and I don't think any efforts to show face to Mr. Trump will help anybody. If the change of direction in Poland is necessary for his big goals, then of course he will do his best, but not because of some political dances of the current opposition in Poland.
I think I've exhausted all the serious topics, so maybe forgive me if I ask you this, but what did you make of Melania's hat? She was the only woman wearing a hat, and at some point it even prevented Donald Trump from kissing her.
Maybe this was the point of this hat, I don't know, to stop him from kissing her, but, you know, she's just an elegant woman. There were quite a few women who were wearing sort of French beret.
But nothing as spectacular as this hat.
Well, there was one thing which really struck me, Mr. Former President Biden crossing himself, and it was not during the speech by the new president, but it was during the introduction by Senator Klobuchar, talking about hopefully peaceful transfer of power at the heart of our democracy. And at this moment, Biden clapped his hands and then crossed himself.
So may God help us.
Yes, but so may God help America.
Thank you, Michał, for these comments.
Thank you very much.
This is all we've got for you today. Thank you very much for watching, and see you later this week.